Captain America: Civil War, 2016, A Clash of Ideals and Heroes. Introduction. Released in 2016, Captain America: Civil War is the third installment in the Captain America trilogy and the 13th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU. Directed by Anthony and Joe Russo, this film is one of the MCU's most ambitious projects, as it brings together numerous superheroes and serves as a direct sequel to both Captain America: The Winter Soldier and Avengers: Age of Ultron. While it's officially a Captain America film, Civil War functions as a major crossover, featuring almost all the prominent Avengers. At its core, the film deals with a clash of ideals, friendships tested, and the dire consequences of power and accountability. It introduces new characters, such as T'Challa, Black Panther, and Peter Parker, Spider-Man, while pushing the MCU's narrative into a more morally complex direction. Plot overview. The film opens with Steve Rogers, Captain America, Chris Evans, Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson, Sam Wilson, Falcon, Anthony Mackie, and Wanda Maximoff, Scarlet Witch, Elizabeth Olsen, thwarting a heist in Lagos, Nigeria. However, when Wanda accidentally causes an explosion that kills several civilians, the incident prompts global concern over the Avengers' unchecked power and destructive consequences. This leads to the introduction of the Sokovia Accords, a set of legal documents proposed by the United Nations that would put the Avengers under government oversight. The Accords are supported by Tony Stark, Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr., who is grappling with the guilt of his role in past destruction, most notably in Sokovia during Age of Ultron, and believes that the Avengers need accountability. Stark's encounter with a grieving mother, whose son was killed during the Sokovia battle, further solidifies his stance. In contrast, Steve Rogers opposes the Accords. He believes that government oversight could restrict the Avengers from acting when necessary and that they need to retain their autonomy to operate effectively. The fundamental disagreement between Tony and Steve sets up the central conflict of the film. Should the Avengers be accountable to governments, or should they remain independent? During the ratification of the Sokovia Accords in Vienna, an explosion kills King T'Chaka of Wakanda. His son, T'Challa, Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman, vows revenge on the man responsible for the bombing, who is identified as Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, Sebastian Stan, Steve's longtime friend and war companion. Bucky, who had been living in hiding, is now accused of terrorism. Steve refuses to believe that Bucky is guilty and sets out to find him before the authorities. This action places Steve, Sam, and Bucky at odds with Tony and the governments enforcing the Accords. Meanwhile, a shadowy figure named Helmut Zemo, Daniel Bruhl, is manipulating events behind the scenes, seeking revenge for the death of his family in Sokovia by turning the Avengers against each other. The conflict escalates when Tony assembles a team of Avengers loyal to the Sokovia Accords, including War Machine, Don Cheadle, Black Widow, Vision, Paul Bettany, and the newly introduced Peter Parker, Spider-Man, Tom Holland. Steve forms his own team to defend Bucky and resist the Accords, recruiting Ant-Man, Paul Rudd, Hawkeye, Jeremy Renner, and Scarlet Witch. This all leads to the film's most iconic scene: the airport battle in Leipzig, Germany. This epic confrontation pits Team Cap, led by Steve, against Team Iron Man, led by Tony, showcasing the different skills and powers of each hero. Though the fight is exhilarating, it's tinged with tragedy, as we see longtime friends and allies fight one another. In the midst of the battle, War Machine, James Rhodes, is severely injured when Vision accidentally strikes him down, causing him to fall from the sky and become paralyzed. This injury deepens the emotional toll of the conflict and the divide between Tony and Steve. The film's climax takes place at a hidden Hydra facility in Siberia, where Steve, Bucky, and Tony converge. They discover that Zemo's real plan was to reveal that Bucky, while under Hydra's mind control, had killed Tony's parents years earlier. This revelation triggers an intense, personal fight between Tony, Steve, and Bucky. Tony, enraged by the revelation, tries to kill Bucky, but Steve intervenes to protect his friend. The battle ends with Steve abandoning his shield and going on the run with Bucky. In the final moments of the film, Zemo's plan to fracture the Avengers succeeds, as the team is left broken and divided. However, Steve sends Tony a letter, explaining that despite their differences, he will always be there if Tony needs him. Key characters and their arcs. Steve Rogers, Captain America. Chris Evans, Steve's unwavering moral compass is central to his character. His refusal to sign the Sokovia Accords stems from his distrust of government interference, particularly after witnessing SHIELD's corruption in The Winter Soldier. His loyalty to Bucky further complicates his stance, leading to personal sacrifices as he chooses principle over allegiance to his friends. Tony Stark, Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr. Tony's arc in Civil War is rooted in guilt and a desire for accountability. His support for the Sokovia Accords reflects his belief that the Avengers' power needs to be checked. But his emotional response to discovering Bucky's role in his parents' death leads to a darker, more vengeful side of Tony than we've seen before. Bucky Barnes, The Winter Soldier. Sebastian Stan. Bucky's struggle with his identity and his past as a brainwashed Hydra assassin is central to the conflict. His friendship with Steve drives much of the film's narrative, and his role in Tony's parents' deaths adds a deeply personal dimension to the climax. T'Challa, Black Panther. Chadwick Boseman. Introduced in Civil War, T'Challa is initially driven by revenge after his father's death but ultimately learns the value of justice over vengeance. His arc sets up his role as the noble and wise king of Wakanda, further explored in Black Panther. Wanda Maximoff, Scarlet Witch. Elizabeth Olsen. Wanda's role in the Lagos incident and her subsequent feelings of guilt over civilian casualties make her one of the most conflicted characters in the film. She struggles with the responsibility of her powers and becomes a symbol of the debate over control versus freedom. Peter Parker, Spider-Man. Tom Holland. Spider-Man's introduction in Civil War is one of the film's highlights. As a young, enthusiastic superhero, Peter's allegiance to Tony is more about hero worship than the moral complexities of the Accords. His presence provides levity and excitement, while setting up his future in the MCU. Helmut Zemo. Daniel Bruhl. Zemo is a different kind of villain, motivated not by power or domination, but by revenge. His plan to destroy the Avengers from within is a slow-burn manipulation. And while he is captured at the end, his success in dividing the team makes him one of the more effective antagonists in the MCU. Themes: accountability and power. The Sokovia Accords serve as a metaphor for the broader question of how unchecked power should be governed. The film grapples with the moral and ethical dilemmas of heroism, particularly how much control governments should have over individuals with extraordinary abilities. Ideological divide. The film explores the clash of ideals between Steve and Tony. Steve's belief in freedom and autonomy stands in contrast to Tony's belief in oversight and regulation. This ideological divide reflects real-world debates about freedom versus security and personal responsibility versus collective accountability. Friendship and loyalty. Civil War is, at its heart, a film about broken friendships. The deep bond between Steve and Bucky, and Steve's loyalty to his friend, comes into conflict with his relationship with Tony. The personal stakes are high, as longtime friendships are tested and ultimately fractured. Revenge versus justice. T'Challa's arc highlights the theme of revenge versus justice. His initial desire for vengeance against Bucky is transformed by the end of the film when he chooses to show mercy and capture Zemo instead of killing him. Production and action sequences. Direction by the Russo brothers. Anthony and Joe Russo once again deliver a fast-paced, action-packed film, building on their success with The Winter Soldier. Their ability to handle a large ensemble cast and balance action with emotional depth is evident throughout the film. Choreography and fight sequences. The airport battle is one of the most memorable action sequences in the MCU, featuring nearly every major character engaging in a massive brawl. The fight between Tony, Steve, and Bucky in the climax is intense, emotionally charged, and personal. Visual effects and cinematography. The film's visual effects, particularly in the shrinking abilities of Ant-Man and Spider-Man's web-slinging, are top-notch. The use of close-quarters combat, particularly in hand-to-hand fight scenes, grounds the action in a more realistic and visceral way. Reception and impact. Captain America: Civil War was a commercial and critical success, grossing over $1.1 billion worldwide. It was praised for its emotional depth, character-driven story, and spectacular action sequences. Many critics lauded the film for balancing the large ensemble cast while still focusing on the personal stakes of the conflict. The film also set the stage for future MCU events, particularly the division of the Avengers, which would play a major role in Avengers: Infinity War and Avengers: Endgame. The introduction of Spider-Man and Black Panther were also key developments that would lead to successful solo films for both characters. Legacy. Captain America: Civil War is regarded as one of the best films in the MCU, both for its action-packed spectacle and its exploration of deeper themes of power, accountability, and friendship. It redefined the superhero genre by focusing on internal conflicts rather than external threats, and demonstrated that even in a universe full of gods, super soldiers, and billionaires in high-tech armor, the most profound battles are often personal. Conclusion. Captain America: Civil War is a landmark film in the MCU that combines thrilling action with complex emotional and moral dilemmas. Its exploration of accountability, friendship, and the cost of heroism leaves a lasting impact on both the characters and the broader MCU narrative. The film's ability to blend large-scale superhero action with intimate, character-driven drama makes it one of the most significant and beloved entries in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.